Some of you might know me from Resource Recovery Australia and Soft Landing and other enterprises prior to that, but I am on this secondment to CRNA until August in place of Matt Allen, who's actually going to take the gig when I get back for a project I'll cover. And he's on a secondment to the Philippines to develop a social enterprise business plan while I develop his. So that's the state of affairs. So CRNA is the peak membership body for community. We say recycling enterprises, it's really reuse, repair and recycling enterprises, particularly going forward. They're typically, they are all not-for-profit models, either a co-op or a social enterprise, which means they, no individual can particularly benefit. They're a not-for-profit structure, and over 50% of revenue has to be from trade to meet social enterprise definition. A baseline study of the members of this network showed that they're operating in terms of tiny, small, maybe tip shop to multi-state enterprises working across 63 locations in Australia. And we all share the hashtag waste to wages. It's a dual social and environmental agenda that kind of aligns this network. So some of the key objectives for CRNA are to provide an effective point if you want to go to the peak body about finding out about what the sector's doing, or for public policy and submissions. We want to be able to sustain a network that's able to provide support, advice and guidance to new and emerging enterprises as well as those looking to scale. We want to increase the profitability and scale of our member network, and also influence the political environment towards pushing people up the waste hierarchy, because social enterprises tend to be working up that reuse high end. A key focus for social enterprises is job creation. In fact, in the baseline study, it's often an even bigger motivator. So particularly for regional towns, this is becoming quite interesting to people to have a triple bottom line, so you've got social, environmental considerations as well as economic viability. The network has 63 locations, but this was back in 2012, and a survey has just gone out last week for any people working in this space in New South Wales from the Office of Environment and Heritage and Centre for Social Impact to recapture that impact, because we know a number of people that have scaled significantly and there's a lot of new operators. So I think that that'll be a new landscape in this latest report for New South Wales. That 1,500 people are employed and 152,000 tonnes are being diverted. This is back in 2012. So some of the key achievements. The CRNA was actually established after the Social Enterprise World Forum that was held in Australia in 2009. And it's this really beautiful subsector. It's a growth industry with a lot of entry-level labour. So there was a lot of value-aligned people trying to deal in this industry but also create jobs. So we formed the network then. In 2012, we did that baseline study with the Centre for Philanthropic and Not-for-Profit Studies to capture the impact of the sector around those metrics. In 2013, the Ian Potter Foundation supported a free ebook that we developed for members that were looking to start up, which had case studies of the top 3 social enterprises in the country and sharing their policies and procedures, which are quite different models. Social enterprises are working across residential as well as C&D and C&I streams in different states. We also were able to make a short film, Waste to Wages, that profiled the 3 top community recycling enterprises in that study, which is already, I think, quite out of date for the people profiled in it, but it's available on our website. It's 11 minutes, I can't get it through, and you probably all saw it a few years back. In 2014, we developed a consulting relationship with RRA, who are expanding and building in a consulting arm, having been around for 23 years at the time, but to share how do you create a social enterprise between a not-for-profit and a council. And so they built a consulting arm and work with CRNA. If there's someone that wants to know about an enterprise within the network, they can send that person. For instance, Hobart's really good at deconstructing whole houses and getting those building materials back to builders, so that person can be shipped out within that consulting arm. Also, CRNA's had a relationship with Australia Post. In 2016, we diverted 12,000 uniforms, so that was about taking off the branding for Australia Post and selling them back as uniforms to community recycling enterprises within the network. We also run some safety and environmental training workshops with the ERM Foundation, and I'm particularly here to talk about, during my secondment, I'm focused on 2 projects that I've been kind of pushing, and one is the SS Rock. David's here today and we'll talk more about this. Looking at really collaboration happens at a regional level, so how can we get different community reuse and recycling enterprises to either co-locate or collaborate or do cross-sector partnerships with the commercial sector to really get people up the waste hierarchy, and also to educate councils about what is this social procurement, social enterprise space. And we've looked a lot to Ian's model and the work that Sarah has done in Auckland, where they have created a redistribution centre that can supply to all of the smaller operators, which has been a really interesting one to observe. The other key thing in 2017 is to develop an impact tool where we can actually measure our social and environmental impact, which is about, there's some high level metrics we could, I think the community recycling sector does a hell of a lot with limited resources in some ways, and doesn't necessarily communicate that impact back. So if you could build a tool that collated, this is happening in the Illawarra, or this happened on the North Coast, or this is happening in a particular state, or nationally, this is the impact, and to measure the job creation, the reuse, the recycling, and also the economic contribution. They seem the high level metrics, but we want to build a tool that community recycling enterprises can drill lower, like further into, to punch out a report for themselves, because impact measurement is in demand, but quite tricky to sometimes pull together the full picture. Some of the regular activities, if you're running a social enterprise, to be in membership, monthly teleconferences is often information exchange. We're working on sending people from one enterprise to another as a sort of exchange program. We have monthly bulletins, resource pages open to members, and we take an active role in Social Procurement Australasia, which was a consultancy working on how to procure that. As people want more strategic procurement to get a triple bottom line, they've engaged Social Procurement Australasia to do that specific training. So we often present together with people like Social Procurement Australasia or Social Traders, the peak body for social enterprise, about how to do this within the waste sector. Some of the members that will present in the next 3 sessions, as well as our workshop, so I won't talk about them, but we've got Dare, Reverse Garbage, 40 years, that's what I say about reverse garbage, that's amazing. So Dare can talk about the rest. We also have Barbara from Garage Sale Trail, who's 150 councils taking part in the garage sale. And then we have a workshop with Joe McNeil, who was the Secretary of Social Procurement Australasia and a great expert on social enterprise, who's going to be on a panel with Arthur from the Endeavour Foundation, the recycling manager, and Andrew Douglas from Resource Recovery Australia and Soft Landing. So she's going to pick their brains and there'll be time for questions. Oh, sorry, it's Carlos. Sorry, Carlos. I'm just so used to seeing Arthur around the traps. I just wanted to note that that's 211 years of experience in just those enterprises. So one of the some of the other enterprises that aren't here talking today that I did want to profile is the Bower, who's also been around for 18 years and really high up the waste chain in terms of really around getting into this repair space and working in reuse. So they have a collection and referral service for households. They work with 21 councils across Greater Sydney, and they're also starting to open their repair cafes, and they've expanded from Sydney to Parramatta. And really that I do see sort of repair as the new waste education, like demonstration projects that are actually doing. A fantastic enterprise on where some of these Auckland models, if it's more supply could be coming to somewhere like the Bower and more sites, there'd be a lot of more diversion around reuse and repair. And a lot of community engagement. Green Connect is another enterprise back in the Illawarra that's been going for 8 years working in food and organics. So FOGO, I think, is 98%, I last heard, of what they divert from landfill. And they work with 64 council and businesses, and that's a lot around festival and event recycling, because there's quite a lot of a big event calendar there, but private and local government events. But they also have a resource recovery labour hire crew that go out, and they also have their own urban farm. So they've got really sort of long-term plans for that region. And they employ 129 refugees and young people in that region. Green Collect is another great model in Melbourne that particularly works with the CBD. So they have 200 businesses signed up to get the really tricky items out of the waste stream. And one of those examples is they take letterhead from corporates and then they turn it into notebooks and sell them back to those corporates for conferences. So it's about, and they have quite labour intensive model and right up the hierarchy as well that creates jobs, and that's a big focus for them. There's videos on our website. I couldn't work out who to show one, so I thought I'll show none, but the website at the end has all the videos. So they've saved to date 1 million items from landfill. Resource Recovery Australia, obviously may have presented about this. So landfills and transfer stations and tip shops, also a mobile problem waste truck in Western Sydney. And again, been around for 26 years, so that whole concept, it kind of came from an environmental community development space about building in the men's shed at the landfill to salvage the timber and make items, building up cycling studios and green bikes programs with schools to repair bikes for kids that are having trouble. So there's a quite high diversion there, and that's a bit about an enterprise that has been able to scale and go into different states and scale up operations. So I think there's a lot of other members that could potentially replicate and transfer their models. So the project I've been working on during this secondment is till August, is this, which David from SSROC will be talking to in the workshop. How am I going for time, Ian? 5 minutes, good-o. So it's about how can we grow that network within Sydney, and by Sydney we mean, well, to move people up the chain, and I think SSROC's shown real leadership in this as a commitment in their strategy. And while it's a project funded by SSROC is keen to service the Sydney metropolitan region. So that's 5 ROCs plus 1 Illawarra joint organisation. And we've really, to try and have an impact in collaboration across that particular region. So what local government wants, and this is something I'd really like to test with people if you talk to David and I around today. We have tested the priorities for community recycling enterprises, and now we're really looking to hear from local government what you'd get out of such a network if we developed a chapter of CRNA but in Greater Sydney to facilitate growth in reuse and repair particularly, but also recycling. So one is to meet obviously the targets for councils and reduce tonnages and reliance on bulky waste cleanup, prevent illegal dumping, improve access to enterprise and technology solutions, so that's sometimes cross-sector collaboration between public and private. Get a credible pool of suppliers, so it might be that you want to work with a social enterprise but you're not sure. There are people like Social Traders looking to accredit social enterprises. There are enterprises willing to scale and partner. And there are others that are doing really organic growth and need to probably a different path to engage but are still really valuable. Also wanting reliable data to measure and communicate that impact that is reuse hasn't been well captured, and if we can capture it in this tool we hope that's of benefit. And also just training and professional development about how to socially procure, or coming and meeting enterprises and hearing how it actually works. And creating responsible citizens. So in December last year we held a network forum held by SSROC, facilitated by Social Traders, to see if there was an appetite for a network in Greater Sydney. And 23 social enterprises turned up, and it was a highly engaged and representatives from all of those ROC regions. And the top priorities for community recycling enterprises were advocate for policy that supports community recycling enterprises, coordinating access to markets, facilitating collaboration, addressing barriers to capital, and growing markets for products and services of CREs. What was amazing was we agreed on a purpose statement in about 5 minutes, which was kind of, you can spend all day on this stuff, so that was pretty good, and it broadens it a bit to the industrial ecology, circular economy network. So that is our purpose statement for now, for a district model of CRNA in Greater Sydney. So I've started on March 1st to spend March doing a draft. I've done a draft business plan for what it might look like and how a network could sustain itself. We did some mapping about the reuse, recycling, repair enterprises, and we found there's approximately 34 across 47 locations in that region. There are currently 9 of those are paying CRNA members nationally, working across 16 sites, 30,000 tonnes diverted, 292 jobs. So we extrapolated from that if our goal was to have 25 of the 34 series members by 2020, we'd be looking at 66 sites. That might come down because there'd be a bit of consolidation there, but 124,000 tonnes potentially, and over 1,000 jobs. And that equates to the national study about similar impact. So that just talks about what if some of these places could scale or replicate across that region. Some of the issues faced are fragmentation, so there's a lot of small players, and how, if you want to engage a social enterprise, do you do that? So Sarah in Sydney wants to be that focal point where you can come to and put something through that's available to all members. Lack of coordinated sector, so a coordination role really for opportunities to work with social enterprises. There's a bit of limited information. I do think that if we can actually put out there a website that communicates the impact of the sector and the work of the sector, it's quite impressive already. So the key project is to develop a website that's public facing to residents to understand who is out there locally for them and the impact. But also developing some common standards. Solutions, collaboration to achieve scale. I do think that we've seen enterprises do cross-sector collaborations that can have a scaling effect. Collective voice, high-level information gathering. So CRNA often works with universities to do case studies and research. We're doing some at the moment with the Centre for Social Impact. And core competencies and standards across the sector to improve reliability and consistency. So some of in the business plan that I'm happy to talk to anyone about, or sent a copy for feedback, is to develop the tool. Advocacy service is key, so advocating the work of the sector and what the sector's needs are, developing this tool, which we're on track to try and do over the next 18 months, building access to market, so facilitating collaboration that is cross-sector if that comes up as an opportunity, addressing barriers to capital. There's a lot working in the social finance space that enterprises aren't accessing, and potentially running forums to engage that space. Growing the market for the products and services, that's a lot around just promoting what's already out there and having events where people can come and meet the different enterprises, as well as the resource library and events and training calendar each year. So some of the key activities we've done were holding that forum with SSROC in December, the reporting agreement. We submitted the draft business plan on the 31st of March. We've had a really great technical advisory group review that with a rep from the EPA, SSROC, 2 Sydney councils, 2 community recycling enterprises from out of the region, and Local Government New South Wales. It was really positive. So over the next few weeks we'll be pulling that feedback. So if anyone wants to talk to me, I'd like to get as much input as we can. And with the view to, it's now we're thinking of merging. We're going to launch the Sydney network in September, and the annual forum for Serenade is in November, and everyone's welcome to attend, where different enterprises present and share information. But we think we're going to merge them. That was the view of the technical committee. So we're looking at a November launch. That's the website if you want to find anything further out.